Well, welcome to Richie's Roost in Shaco, Mississippi. You will notice that we are again in my outdoor studio, which has some hazards to it. Beautiful day here in Shaco this morning, the day before election in Georgia. It's cloudy, it's not sunshiny, but it's 72 degrees. It's a Mississippi temperature for December, which I appreciate. And I thought we'd do something today that I've kind of dreaded doing, to be honest with you, because I don't think a lot of people would believe me. But I've talked over the years, and it has been years since I started putting these little videos out, that I had a very special friend named James Earl. And I never use last names, but most of the folks around here know exactly who I'm talking about. A lot of folks have asked me over the years, was James Earl a real person? Did he really do those things? And the answer, as I told you before, absolutely yes. There has never, as far as I know, ever been another one like him. I do not know that there will ever be another one like him. But he's gone and I miss him. Still some old stories there, and I thought I'd share a couple of those with you today. Now, James Earl was a photographer, and a really good one. Primarily back in the days of the old films photography. Kodak was a big name then, and he had a reputation among the Kodak people as being one of the best in the country, because he was. But he also belonged to a little fraternity of photographers who were primarily school pictures type people. They had different territories with Kodak and a bunch of other people where they would go into a school, take all the kids' pictures, and provide the school with the pictures to do yearbooks, that type of thing. Well, these photographers were all independent contractors. They worked for themselves, and there were some characters in that group. James Earl was one of them. Although he was one of the lead cats in this arena, he was only one of many. Two of them I got to know very well. One was Seymour from Pennsylvania, and another one was Sidney from down in Venice, Louisiana. Actually, his home base was Baton Rouge, but he had a cabin and a fishing camp down in Venice, Louisiana. And this story that I'm going to tell you has to do with that camp, because we were on our way to that camp. Now, James Earl and Sidney and Seymour and another one that they called Tack Hammer, we won't get into that, every year went to Venice, Louisiana, maybe several times a year, to Sidney's cabin down there, his camp, and they held what they called an international sales meeting. International, I don't understand. Multi-state, yes. International, they just thought that was the thing to do. Well, you went there only by invitation. And a lot of big wigs in Kodak and School Pictures Association, everybody else wanted to go down there with them once in a while, but very few got to go. I was privileged to receive an invitation to go with James Earl and Seymour one morning to Venice, Louisiana, to the international sales meeting at Sidney's cabin. And I jumped at that chance. Well, the morning dawned when we were to leave and go to Venice, Louisiana, and went in James Earl's car, Seymour and I with him, and we tried to time it so that we stopped off at Manchac, Louisiana, and had a brunch at Middendorf's restaurant. Now, if you have not been to Middendorf's in Manchac, Louisiana, I recommend that you try it. We had a big brunch Bloody Marys, and the amount of blood that were in Seymour's and James Earl's Bloody Marys, I decided made it very smart for me to get a Virgin Mary, which I did, maybe a couple of them. But I was very careful about that so that I would be driving the rest of the way to Venice. And that was okay with them. Well, during the course of the meal, we were waited on by a beautiful little raven-haired lady of about maybe 18 or 19 years old. Cajun accent, wonderful, beautiful Cajun accent. And she, because there were very few of us in there, as a matter of fact, I think we were about the only table there at 10:30 that morning, she was able to give us a lot of attention. And so a conversation started. And we wanted to hear her talk. She was curious about three old buzzards like us heading south, saw the rods and reels at the back of the car from the window. And so she started asking about our backgrounds, where we were from, who we were, the general conversation. And they told her where they were from. We were from Pennsylvania and Jackson and Shaco, Mississippi, and had to explain that. So she wanted to know what business we were in and where we were going and why. James Earl piped up, said that we were on our way to New Orleans. By the way, we may have a little wind noise here. I can't control my outside studio acoustics, so we just have to do the best we can. Run into a wind problem, just ignore it. James Earl told her that we were on our way to New Orleans, that he and Seymour had papers to present to a meeting down there. It was very important. It had been put off for about 5 or 6 months, but today was going to be the magic day. And so we were to meet down there at 4:30 and give a paper. And she asked what the paper would be on, and James Earl advised her that he and Seymour were actually brain surgeons and that they had developed a cure to minimize the blood seepage in a brain after a blow to the head. And they were going to present that paper. Brain surgeons presenting their paper to a meeting of doctors down in New Orleans. She was impressed. And the more impressed she got, the more creative James Earl became. She wanted to know about this magic medicine, or whatever it was that they were talking about, that would assist in stopping the blood seepage in a brain. And James Earl told her that, believe it or not, it came from down in this part of the country, comprised mainly of ground up oyster shells. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't keep up with the accuracy with which he explained how that worked in a brain seepage problem, blood seepage problem in the brain. But after a while, it got to the point where almost I believed it. So instead of going fishing, we were going to a brain surgeons conference at which a very important paper was to be presented by these two, as they admitted, world-renowned brain surgeons. Which, of course, left me over on the sideline. And so she asked if I were a doctor. And before I could answer in the negative, James Earl said, well, yes, he is. He doesn't talk much, but he's a doctor, a different type, of course. And he won't be going with us to this meeting because he is a different doctor. She said, well, what kind of doctor are you, sir? James Earl said, well, he's a veterinarian. But he's a very specialized veterinarian. There is not another one like him in the world. And the reason why he's going to New Orleans with us is that he's going to stop by at Jefferson Downs down at the racetrack where they have all those high-powered thoroughbred horses, because that's the only thing he works on, and he's world-renowned. He's a racehorse veterinarian. And she said, really, I never met anyone who only worked on horses. And matter of fact, I don't know anything much about veterinarian. Well, James Earl said, well, you're looking at one of the leaders in the country. His name's Jim. And he's going down there to work on racehorses. You know, some of those racehorses sell for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, up to $1 million maybe. Good ones. And they're very, very, very careful about who they have working on their horses. But he's not only an expert on racehorses, he has one particular malady that he works on, and that's all. And she said, well, what is that? He said, well, he is a racehorse hemorrhoid doctor. He goes down, and, you know, racehorses once in a while just have a terrible case of hemorrhoids. Even a mild case creates problems for them, because if they're going to be running at top speed, they don't want the distraction that hemorrhoids cause. And so he is a world-renowned racehorse hemorrhoid veterinarian. So we're going to drop him off, and then we're going on down to that meeting, and we'll probably pick him up on the way back. Now, hopefully we'll come by here in time to stop and chat with you again. She looked at me with that little Cajun accent and said, is that for true? For true? Before I could say anything, James Earl said, of course it's for true, and acted very, very upset that she might doubt one word he said. So we finished our brunch, and the two brain surgeons and the racehorse hemorrhoid veterinarian left to go south to Venice. I managed, however, to look back. James Earl didn't know that I was watching him. And as we were going out, drop an extra $20 on the table for that beautiful young lady that he had lied to, and probably felt pretty guilty about it. That was the type of thing you ran into wherever James Earl was. Whatever the company was, made no difference at all to him. And he could come into any kind of a situation and come up with the doggone stories you ever heard. I asked Seymour one time, on the way down in that trip, I said, Seymour, after James Earl had gone to the restroom or something, I said, does he always do this whenever you all get together? Because he does with me. I just want to know about you. He said, yeah. I said, well, it's amazing to me how he can come up with something like that in any kind of situation. He said, well, he can, and sometimes it gets us in a little trouble. He said, we had a problem one time, particularly that I can remember, that it could have led to a pretty bad problem. I said, well, you let me in on that? He said, yeah. We were down in Florida, some little town down there. I can't remember what it was, but we had some kind of a meeting. And after the meeting was over, we stayed up pretty late one night. The next morning, we got up and were a little late getting to breakfast. On our way back, and stopped at a restaurant on the way out of town, and had another young lady waiting on us like that. And James Earl said, "We'd like to get our bacon and eggs real quick, please, ma'am. We're in a pretty big hurry. We're behind schedule. We need to get out of here." And she said, "Well, that's just we'll do as best we can." And Seymour said, while she was standing there with her back to us, actually writing down, he said, "What's the problem, James Earl? It's a hurry." And James Earl said, "Well, by now, they've probably discovered those people we tied up at the bank, and I'm sure there's an all-points bulletin out looking for us right now. We need to get out of here and be headed back home pretty quick." And then acted surprised that he had said that with her so close, within hearing distance. She looked at us and went back to the kitchen, and it wasn't long before a policeman walked in the door. and it took us almost an hour to finish breakfast and convince him that there really wasn't a problem, that there was no all points bulletin out for us, and that he have him call both or three little banks that were in that town to make sure that no one was tied up and the bank was doing its regular course of business, which he did. But he said that could have turned into something pretty ugly because he could have restrained us immediately and then checked it out. But he said, I did notice on the way out, he was standing behind our car taking our license plate number down. James Earl would do that. There are other stories like that, one after another, but we don't have time to go into all of those now. We'll save a few of them for later. Those are just two that I thought might be of interest to you and give you an idea of what we had to put up with here all the time. There are so many more, I strain at not getting into telling you more about them, but we'll get to those at another time. Well, it's a beautiful day, as most are, here in my Chaco community. For you people in Georgia, tomorrow, please go out and vote. Whatever candidate, go vote. For the rest of you, I hope you'll come back next time. This is Jim Ritchie, and until then, well, I will see you again next time.